pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bateman?
Here.
Goodyear?
Here.
Hart? Mr. Ori?
Here.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Ping?
Here.
Welcome, everyone. With us tonight, we have our Director of Finance, Mark Medler, our Assistant City Manager, Chris Weinich, Clerk of Council, Misty Clark, City Manager, Dave Kennedy, City Solicitor, Joe Braun, Chief of Police, Michael Gabrielson, former council members, Kent Blair, Todd Osborne, and Pat Mays. And we also have our Finance Clerk, Ann Gott. So we might as well just do that now.
So I just want to thank Ann for her 10 years with the city. And the thing I appreciate most about Ann is when we have a customer come in, call, she really makes a point to have empathy for them and whatever situation they have. If they're just here to say hello or to be friendly with somebody and they just need some interaction, Ann's there to listen to them. If they have a problem, she helps work through that with them. Doesn't just blow someone off and try to get to the next thing that she's dealing with. There's been a number of times where I've been really thankful that she's been doing that and having, a human face to the city, that we do care and that we care about the people's problems. So I really appreciate about that.
I think we talk about it all the time, how much council appreciates. You can come on over here. Appreciates our staff. We're a small community, and our community gets to know our employees, and you're the face of the community the face of council for a lot of our community. And a lot of times they're coming in maybe not happy about their water bill or not happy about their tax bill or have some issues. And I know Mr. Kennedy talks all the time about what a fantastic job you and the other individuals up there do at really calming people down and making us look good by helping our community members. So we're very happy to have you as part of our city. You're a bright spot in our employees. So we're very proud of you. So thanks for everything you do for us.
Well, thank you.
Is this? Oh, okay. You get.
Oh, wow. Fancy.
Should we do a picture?
Just this one.
Well, I'll just say one thing, that I'm really grateful and blessed to work in the community that I live in. And nobody here is who hired me, but I've been really so lucky, and I love our community. And I think that makes it so easy because I want to see everyone be successful and happy and know why they're paying their bills and why they're what they are and why they pay taxes and how to calculate that all properly. So I'm really blessed. So thank you. And to everybody, there's so many public works. There's so many who do outstanding jobs here, our police, fire, everybody does a great job. So I'm really blessed.
Congratulations. All right, for next we have review and approval of minutes from the August 13th, 2024 meeting. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes?
Move to approve as written.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps? Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next we have a public hearing. Would someone like to make a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
No, you have to
I
actually
make a motion to open the public hearing
about what?
about the. I know what it's about, but she gave me a look.
Did.
About the transfer of the property, the Denise property to CIC.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Goodyear,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, Mr. Blair signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Kent Blair. I live at 1849 Pheasant Hills Drive in Loveland, and I am here to speak enthusiastically in favor of the legislation you're considering tonight to transfer the Denise property to the CIC. CIC is CICs were established, defined, and regulated by Ohio Revised Code 17, Section 1724, and they have the authority and facility to set up. It gives cities the authority and facility to set up 501c3 organizations within their boundaries to do things for the community that cities either can't do or are very hard for cities to do. And there's something like 200 of them within the state of Ohio. And Loveland has one. And we have seen how beneficial for the community a CIC can be with the Heights improvement grants that we did several years ago, where we funded the CIC with a sum of money, and over the next couple of years, we spent that money in conjunction with residents of the Heights to improve their homes, and it was very successful. And that kind of thing is what a CIC can do and should do. And with the purchase of the Denise property and the transfer of the property to the CIC, it gives the CIC the ability to have an income stream depending on what we do with the property. And the income stream to the CIC is like blood. And the CIC can't exist without money. And by doing this action, it's a first step towards all kinds of things that the CIC may be able to do in the near future, such as there could theoretically be a mechanism developed to provide funding to help citizens in the community with a retrofit of their outdoor lighting to meet the new lighting ordinance. That would be great. Theoretically, CIC could be used to set up a fund to help people that have large trees that have to be taken down. There are a lot of large trees in the city of Loveland, and a lot of them are old and in need of great help. So that sort of thing. I want to encourage that when the Chestnut Street property comes to its time, that the council also consider moving that property to the CIC as well, because that kind of funding can demonstrably help the community and the surrounding area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next we have the second reading of an ordinance. We'll go ahead and read the ordinance.
We need to close it.
Oh, sorry. You're right. You calling on me that? Because I got on you. Can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close public hearing on transfer property to community.
For a
Second.
Very good. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps, Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, now we have a second reading of an ordinance. Can you please read the ordinance?
Ordinance establishing the compensation and classification for the position of Director of Human Resources, modifying the pay range of the permit specialist position, and repealing Ordinance 2024-25.
All right, is there any further discussion regarding this ordinance? All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps. Yes. Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Ordinance 65 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Wynish?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. The city of Loveland currently, we maintain. We're going to talk about the water system today. Obviously, that's a hot topic, but this is for something that we had prepared prior to Sunday. The city currently, we have 79 miles of water mains with over 5,000 customers within our service area. Over the last 5 years, really, this is a period from 2018 to 2022. We've experienced 97 water main breaks. And these occur typically on, we've got a range of 8 to 10 to 12 inch water mains within the system. So we don't have extremely large water mains within the city, but we do have a large number of those 8 to 10 to 12s. And within the system, we have over 1,600 water main valves. These valves are critical for maintenance and for, obviously, as the community knows, we did have a significant water main break this past Sunday. Those water main valves are utilized to isolate the system when you have issues, whether it be on the mains themselves or when they're on the service lines to residents or to businesses. Oftentimes we need to utilize those valves to isolate the system. To do that, the way that our public works is currently performing that task, it's a manual effort. It's using what's called a valve key, and a lot of times it takes two employees to do that. And a lot of times, because it's a tough task. If you got an 8-inch main or 8-inch valve, typically it's 20 turns to get the valve closed. And what we want to do is become more proactive in our efforts to analyze and take inventory of our system. And the valves are critical. Ohio EPA actually mandates that we have a valve maintenance program as part of our asset management program. And currently, the way we do that is literally by manpower or by staff power. We are proposing in the fiscal 2024 budget, we proposed a trailer-mounted valve exerciser, which essentially is a machine that opens and closes valves with hydraulics, essentially. So it's powered by gas or diesel. The one we're proposing to purchase is a gas-powered machine, and this machine will help us take that valve exercising program, which allows us to know, okay, we've got good valves, we've got bad valves, knowing what needs to be replaced. We'll be able to put just similar to how we do a fire hydrant flushing maintenance program, very similar, where we'll go from neighborhood to neighborhood, get on the valves, exercise them on a periodic basis so that we can take inventory of what valves are good and what aren't. Yesterday or Sunday's event, we did have a couple valves during that situation that unfortunately were not able to be closed successfully. With this program, with this machine, that'll help us get through that process much quicker. Potentially, we would have known those valves were not in working order. This will help us, like I said, be more proactive. We have to stop being so reactive to a lot of situations and become more proactive. With the help of with Ricky Gregory, our water operator, superintendent, and our former city engineer, Cindy Kloffenstein, we were able to get a grant for $40,000 from the Bureau of Workers' Comp. It has been identified that exercising these valves does cause back injuries and shoulder injuries due to the repetitive nature of it. So that was an opportunity for us to leverage some grant money there. The machine we're talking about and that we've priced out is $79,000 and some change. So $79,040.35. With that grant of $40,000, we'll bring it down to basically coming out of the water CIP fund of $30,040.35, which is actually under what we budgeted. We budgeted out of that fund. We budgeted $35,000, and we actually budgeted another $35,000 out of our storm fund because this is a dual application machine where not only does it exercise the valves, opens and closes, it also has a mechanism on it for the valve chamber itself. So typical water mains are 4'6". A lot of mains are a little bit deeper than that. There's a chamber that goes down that a lot of times mud, leaves, debris gets down in there and does impede the ability to open and close the valves. This also has what I call a mini vac, so basically a large shop vac, extremely large shop vac on it to be able to clean out those valve pits. So that was the idea, was we could also use this on the storm side also. But seeing what we were able to get in the grant money of the $40,000, we were able to obviously come in under budget what we had expected. So before you is simply a request to move forward with that purchase, which would come out of that water CIP fund.
Okay, thank you. I figured at some point this evening we'd be talking about not just this, but also what occurred on Sunday. So this
Correct.
seems like the right time. So, what, Mr. Kennedy, if you want to speak to what we just talked about in addition to the event
Yeah.
on Sunday, and then council, your comments can be.
I think
both.
Chris was right that this project was earmarked, was actually on the agenda, obviously, for Sunday. But one of the first things that Chris said when we got here Monday was we need to, on Tuesday, which was today, we need to literally do a desk meeting with everyone involved to go over all the items that we did while it's fresh on our mind, give everybody a day to get everything back. And I think that was really benefit. Chris's experience in utilities is a real benefit to the city. So I think that what he is talking about, beginning to have a maintenance program and being able to identify valves way in advance, including those valves that gunk has filled up that we haven't checked in advance, is a big part of it. But we immediately acknowledged things that we can do better. So you're not going to stop water main breaks, but you can do a lot of things to be better prepared. And that's a big part of what we did today with Ricky and with Scott and with Krista. How can we do this better? We need to delegate responsibilities better. We need to draw in the comm center so they're better informed. You can imagine how many phone calls they were getting. So I think, and the mayor thought it was important to express to everyone that this, if we don't learn from Sunday, then we're really letting down the community. We're never going to stop water main breaks ever. But if you can capitalize on it right off the bat, Chris has already got an SOP where every 2 months they will go up to the county connection. They will open the county connection. They'll add an extra valve so they'll visually be able to see the water going through. That was a big part of the problem. The valve was opened after they left. The valves, a mechanism called a PRV valve shut down the Claremont County flow so that stopped the tower from filling up. So I just think the mayor wanted me to get everybody the opportunity to say that we've already taken steps to learn from Sunday. We've already regrouped to come back a month from today to go back over everything we can and what we can do. Already, Chris is getting ready to reach out to Greater Cincinnati Waterworks to make sure we've got that other connection up by Woodford, that one, the protocols, that's a bigger protocol, and working with Greater Cincinnati. So I think the mayor just thought it would be important to let the community know that we've already taken steps to sort of learn. Communications and how we communicate is a big part of it. Chris is looking into a program called Code Red, and Code Red would be a system where they would be able to set basically geofence around the areas, and then using the technology, those people would get texts. Even landlines would get phone calls. So I think that was really, we just wanted to tell everybody that we are immediately trying to learn. Chris is leading that charge with all the public works guys.
Well, and most of everybody probably saw Mr. Kennedy's statement that came out yesterday, which I thought was absolutely perfect, and probably wisely, Mr. Kennedy's not on Facebook. I said this would be one time that you might have enjoyed reading the comments, because every single one was, this is what a leader is. So I think you really, and wasn't just words, really are looking at every aspect and how we can do it better, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. So I thought you did a great job on that. But with that, so does anybody have any comments or questions regarding this particular memo, resolution, and or what occurred Sunday? Yes, Mr. Ori.
Mr. Weinich, I'm big on preventive maintenance. With real estate, I used to have programs that I ran all the time. And Mr. Kennedy mentioned every 2 or 3 months now you'll start to open and close these things and clean them out. What was the previous preventive maintenance?
So for valve maintenance, they basically were trying to get on valves as frequently as they could. And I'll be completely honest with you, when you do it manually, I would be shocked. 1,600 valves. I'd be shocked if they got on one valve. Like, probably each valve probably saw an exercise every 6 to 7 years tops. You just can't do it manually. It's not feasible. But I think what you're leaning towards is the interconnections also. Yeah. We have an interconnection with Claremont County, and we have an interconnection with Hamilton County. I don't believe that there was a standard operating procedure that was in place as far as how often those should be exercised. Going forward, with some modifications, we will be operating the Claremont County interconnection at least once every 2 months, which is a good frequency. And then there's some additional modifications that need to happen at Hamilton with GCWW, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks. And those will happen soon. And we will eventually implement a once every 2 months for that interconnection. Those are our only 2 interconnections that we have with other water purveyors for our system. We have an interconnection with Western Water. However, that interconnection is simply to serve Western Water. They can't serve us. So we're also looking at, there's an opportunity on Union Cemetery to create another interconnection with Greater Cincinnati Water, and we will be exploring that in the upcoming months also.
I think it's really important to make sure we maintain, our infrastructure, especially on the valves. So, and I had mentioned this, a year or two ago. Also, the same thing, Mr. Kennedy, about the roofs on the buildings as well. Making sure we get our inspections in and everything.
Yes.
But just one more comment, and that is, I was affected by the water. Several of us sitting here were, and I can tell you that, as frustrating as it was very nice to hear and see the communication and the updates, and to know that you guys are working on it as hard as you could. I really appreciate it. It was good to know, good to see, and like I said, it's as frustrating as it was, not just for me, but for I don't know how many residents were involved. Were helped, but, thousands, I guess. But yeah,
correct.
It was good updates. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes.
I just to kind of to what Mr. Uri was saying, I live in Warren County, so we were affected as well by this, and I just want to publicly thank all the public works people that worked on this. I mean, Sunday everybody knows how hot and terrible Sunday was, and when you're talking people working all day long outside in very difficult conditions, and like obviously Mr. Ori said, it's obviously somewhat frustrating to lose water or whatever, but to have service restored in what I think was a pretty quick manner, considering the nature of the problem, I just think that it was great work by Public Works. Also, I know Mr. Kennedy was probably working very hard all day, as I'm sure Mr. Weinish was as well, on the issue, and I appreciate them. And I think the mayor said it very well. When I read Mr. Kennedy's statement on Monday, I called him and told him that I felt like it was literally just the perfect way to approach communication with the public about what took place. And I think that obviously the city employees worked as hard as they could to get this resolved. I have complete confidence that the discussions they've had now going forward, they're going to be resolution to any potential problems that occurred during this. But I just was very impressed, and I just want to make sure that it didn't go unsaid that we certainly appreciate all the work from Public Works when this took place.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Hart.
Go ahead. Sorry. I know that's awesome.
That was not an obvious phrase.
I was like,
I didn't see that.
I know. Sorry.
Mr. Wise, just to kind of circle back around, I think I heard this, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this piece. It sounds like we are leaning towards like a strategic plan of preventative maintenance on this that we did not previously have. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And those, you said 1,600 valves.
1,600 mainline valves. Yes. Yes.
What do you think? And this is a ballpark question. I'm not putting no spot here in terms of like numbers, but how many more are you saying? Like every 6 to 7 years? How often do you think we'll be able to get through these with this new equipment?
I think, with the staffing levels we have and creating with the help of staff, helping Public Works out, create a game plan for similar to how you do hydrant flushing, where you attack neighborhood by neighborhood. And in reality, you don't even go neighborhood by neighborhood. You really should be identifying, and we'll identify our critical valves. So there's critical valves within the system, meaning there's certain valves that if we have a main break between here and here, we're going to have 100 people out, whereas between this valve and this valve, we only have 10 people out. So you identify, and that's easily done. You identify your critical valves. So to answer your question, I believe they can get pretty well through the system over 2 years, which is the Ohio EPA recommends getting through your system, a system of our size, getting through your system once every 3 years. That's the goal, is to get through once every 3 years. We have high expectations as we should. Our goal, I think, will be, let's get through this hopefully over 2 years through that, and then we recycle back over. That'll be the goal.
Yeah, I think that's a solid goal. I appreciate that. And a couple comments. One, I want to thank Mr. Kennedy for his communication. And I noticed he was the point person. I know he was not the only person by a wide margin that was working a lot of hours over the weekend. And I'm deeply appreciative of our Public Works and all our staff here, Mr. Weinstein, everybody was working, Ms. Clark, getting things done to make sure that we're getting water back as quickly as possible. The communication piece, I think, was fantastic. I had a couple people actually ask me about the communication piece, and I would I want to say publicly, and that if you do not have the text updates at this point, please get them. They are beneficial. They keep you abreast of everything that is going on. So between our social media presence, city website, and especially the text updates, please sign up for those things. Those are hugely beneficial, and they keep you abreast of everything that's going on. And then lastly, the last comment, a little long-winded, but the last comment I have is this. I think that a mark of great leadership is owning when things don't go exactly right, and standing up and saying, you know what, we can do this better. So from that angle, I don't think we could ask any more of a person or an entity like the city than to stand up and say, you know what, we can do this better, and we're going to sit down 24 hours after we've got it wrapped, and we're going to figure out a way to do it better next time. So I'm deeply appreciative for the ownership, because ownership is I think one of the biggest pieces of leadership, and I think what we're seeing here is ownership of something we can do better, and a goal to get that fixed and changed, brought up to our standards here as quickly as possible. So I'm deeply appreciative of that.
Very good, Mr. Bateman.
Good call. Good shout out to the text updates, Mr. Hart. I think that the communication piece was I'm sure was a challenge, and it's difficult to try to reach everybody these days, and especially with something that's kind of out of the blue and urgent at the same time. So yeah, I don't want to belabor the points that everyone else has made in terms of the humility shown by our leaders and the perseverance and dedication. I mean, it's clearly, as Mr. Weinich was describing, it's hard scrabble, bootstrapping work to get these things back up and running. And what I was thinking as one of those affected was, I'm glad I'm in the know. I know what to do. This is inconvenience for sure, but it's nothing to be alarmed at. We're in good hands, and I'm grateful. I'm left thinking how grateful I am that it is our hands that we're in. In other words, the system belonging to the city of Loveland, we know is going to be fixed. We know what the problems are. We know how to fund those problems. We know where we went wrong or what we did right. And I think that coming away from that and owning that, to Mr. Hart's point of continuous improvement, I would not want to be in a different place than where we are right now with regards to that. So I think that I'm grateful for the system itself and the fact that we've got such institutional knowledge. The only piece I'll add to this that I think I find kind of interesting is you mentioned the BWC grant. So I'm just hopeful that is that somehow tied into like training of this equipment, or can you explain a little bit? You mentioned that the use of the exerciser is a little bit hazardous or can be debilitating or something. So I'm sure there'll be training for our folks working it, but how does that work with the grant funding?
So actually, it's the reverse of that. So the BWC identified, this was last year when I don't know how often they release these grants, but essentially what BWC has said is it's not this machine, it's the manual operating of valves can cause injury. So this was actually identified, this actual machine was identified as one of the potential machines throughout, I'm not sure all the other different machines they have, not just valve exercisers, whatever it may be within Public Works or any of that stuff. But this was identified as something that can help prevent injuries.
All right.
So no, this is a, I'm not saying it's a foolproof machine. There is training that will be done. It's actually, we purchase it from it'll be purchased from Walks, who will, they will provide training on the machine. So no, it's actually because of the manual intensity of operating valves.
Right, so this is a stress reduction.
Correct. Yep.
Got it. Well, that's great and good. I mean, once again, it's so whether it's coincidence or karma, the agenda following through to current events is a little uncanny. But again, this is I think a great move in the right direction to what everyone has said regarding recent events and ongoing maintenance. So thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we're supposed to time history, but machines love to use technology. Remember, it sounds to me as two was fun. It helps diagnose the condition, the valves, and it can also help treat by having systems that is a much safer place. Am I tracking this correctly?
You're spot on. You're spot on, Mr. Phelps. Spot on.
And just be interested in knowing if you consulted with any other communities that have work well for them.
Yeah. So obviously, myself coming from Warren County, we had this machine for the I'd say at least 4 years. It's been a lifesaver. As you know, Warren County is a little larger than City of Loveland. We had 30,000 customers, and so if you figure take that times 5, we probably had 8,000 water valves within the county. It's been a lifesaver. In fact, when we were doing our inquiry into costing this out, we did reach out to Warren County. There are other communities, but obviously I've got a relationship there. And this Walks machine is actually It's cheaper than other versions also, but it's also very reliable. They've been very happy with it, and it has truly changed the way they approach their valve maintenance program.
Okay. Any further comments,
Just a quick question.
Corey?
Mr. Weinich, you said 20 turns to turn a valve off. How long does that take them, and how long will this machine take to do that, roughly?
On an 8-inch valve, 20 turns. It's roughly, depending on which gentlemen or women are doing that, it varies. But typically, it'll take around 30 to 45 seconds. This will take around 7 to 8 seconds to do an 8-inch valve. Now, obviously, this is a machine that we will get trained on because you can
Sure.
There's a prevention to not over torque. It'll react similar to a drill would in the same sense where if it feels the over torque, is coming on, it'll shut itself down so it doesn't snap that nut. But so, you're cutting your time. You're cutting your time, in a fourth essentially. It's a fourth of the time. Not to mention, it's a lot safer too. So, with a lot of valves, typically when we lay water main, you try to get them out of the roadways. Ideally, you're out of the roadways. But if you got a machine out there and you only have to have one person out there with that machine, and you can have the other person watching traffic and maintaining traffic, compared to two guys on a wrench, I say 30 seconds, but if you got traffic going by you, you're not going as fast as you could go. So yeah, you're cutting your time easily by a quarter.
Okay. Any further comments? All right. I would just echo big shout out to our Public Works Department and anybody else that was involved in what happened Sunday. Mr. Kennedy was having a 95th birthday party for his lovely mother that we all did that day at his house. And I think spent a large portion of that day. When people get on our website and send messages, questions through that website, Mr. Kennedy gets an email and he personally picks up his phone and calls every person and talks to them individually. And he did that, I think, most of the party that he should have been spending with his mother. So just another example of how lucky we are to have Mr. Kennedy and the service he brings to us and to our community. All right, why don't we read the resolution?
Resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase a trailer-mounted valve exerciser from EH Walks.
All right, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Mr. Ping.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Resolution 66 is adopted by 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So the city was really fortunate a few years back when Eagle Scout John E. Hall came to the city and said he would like for his Eagle Scout project to be a revitalization of the Hill Wagner Cemetery. At that point in time, we must admit we were not overly aware of the cemetery. It's actually located in Hamilton Township. John took on, I really kept questioning why he was taking on this project. I've never seen a young man so eager to do this. And he not only took on the cleaning of it, he took on the recording. He took on every aspect of what it was to revitalize this completely overgrown cemetery. And that really brought it initially to the city's attention. And we're very fortunate that, that sort of snowballed into a realization of the fact that this cemetery is a big part of the city's history. And with that came, I believe, what I felt was a significant move by City Council when City Council decided that, unlike some communities might want to do, that they would like to take over ownership of the cemetery. They emphasized that point when they created the Hill Wagner Cemetery Preservation Committee. That committee largely has met, but has been really powerless to do much more than get organized and talk about the future, because the cemetery remained owned by cemetery, nobody. By Ohio law, the ownership of that cemetery, once it would be established through a quiet title, would be revert to the Hamilton Township. And thanks to the efforts of Joe, because this is a web that had to be unwound, and Joe was able to help put all of this together. So we struck an agreement through Joe with Hamilton Township, where Hamilton Township, if the city would do the quiet title, which creates the title to this property. I want to just add one thing, because I think what the owners of the Blossom Hill development did for the city, because a property cannot be created that is landlocked. A property by physical access to a public street or via easement must attach to a city street. So creating a quiet title and creating the city's ownership of this property would have been for naught if it wasn't for the fact that the developers of Blossom Hill created full easement back out to State Route 48. That was the first step. Not only did that, if you recall, they actually created access down to the cemetery and dedicated some parking to that. Joe Ferrugi did all of that on behalf of the developers of that. So with that, the city, by working with Joe, working with Hamilton Township has agreed that they will accept ownership of the property and immediately transfer that ownership over to the city. We'll be coming back to you with legislation formally accepting it. They also agreed and understood that once it is owned by the city, it must be annexed into the city. And with this intergovernmental agreement, they will then not oppose that annexation. This is not an annexation that will ever lead to, it doesn't touch other properties. So there's no harm, there's no foul with this. So what we're doing tonight simply says, this is the next step. So by authorizing the city manager to execute the intergovernmental agreement, Hamilton Township trustees, which I believe they already met, have agreed to sign their portion of it. The city, through Joe, will do the quiet title. The quiet title then will create the ownership. And then it'll go to township. It'll come back to us. And then we'll be filing the annexation. But by owning it is the most important. The annexation really doesn't impact the fact that Pat and the other people of the cemetery committee can really get started in planning that. The annexation will occur, but remember that Betty Ray water plant's not even in the city. So ultimately it will come in. First and foremost is that the city does ownership. So that's what this agreement does. They kept it short and sweet. If council passes the resolution, I will sign this. It'll go, that will get over to the township. They'll execute it, and we'll take, this is a big step towards what the city's been working on.
Thank you. Any comment or questions? Mr. Braun.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that we're grateful to Hamilton Township and their Board of Trustees for cooperating with us in this effort, because under Ohio law, one thing Dave may not have made clear is that after we do the quiet title action, which I will handle in the next probably week or so, we'll get that filed now that we'll have taken action on this agreement. Under Ohio law, if there is a cemetery located in a township that has no owner, it instantly reverts to the township. A lot of people don't know that townships were actually created in Ohio for the purpose of taking care of cemeteries. Now they do many more things. But the reality is that once it reverts to them, pursuant to this agreement, they've said, we don't want it, we'll hand it off to you. So when they hand it off to us, we then gain site control of the property by putting it into our name, and then we'll annex it into the city so that it's completely within the city. And those who are buried there, who were original founders of the city of Loveland, will once again reside in the city of Loveland. So it's only through the cooperation of a lot of residents here who pushed for this, but also Hamilton Township and them having approved the agreement at their meeting last week. So thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Mr. Bateman?
Yeah, this seems rather unique circumstances. I doubt either. That this is something that we've seen before. So again, I appreciate you just bringing up the circumstances by which this occurred. I think that's really fascinating, like a case study of coincidence again. But also I'd say that I think that the fact that the committee and those that are on the committee that before there was a committee were sort of pushing for this. I think that this is a really exciting thing for the city to be taking on. So it's very, again, unique is the word that comes to mind, because I don't know that this is something 2 years ago we knew we were going to be taking on, but I think it's a good action, and it shows us sort of following the lead that the community has set forth for us. So thanks for unraveling that web, Mr. Braun and Mr. Kennedy, for putting the pieces together to make this happen.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I just would follow up by saying, I mean, this is a good thing that we're doing. It's also the right thing. I mean, we could have started but I was just trying to maintain the cemetery or not. But I think this is an honor to the lives and the addressing this. So it's a very important individuals, pioneer. I think it is the right thing to do. That city shows them how to do it. Like, this is an example of just appreciate the committee and appreciate it's going to be
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Ping?
I'm just curious what the future looks like after we take control of the property. In terms of the things that Mr. Phelps just mentioned, the maintenance of the cemetery and so forth. Will Public Works be taking care of it then, or are we looking for volunteers through the committee, or how will that happen?
It'll be a combination of both. Public Works will have to take over certain maintenance. There are still some trees. We took some trees down in conjunction with Mr. Ehall, who's probably a Mr. by now, and we worked with a local haddock tree, actually volunteered and helped the city out to get a bunch of trees. There's more that needs to come down. There's fencing. There's a lot of other things, but this is also a prime volunteer opportunity. We get calls from organizations. Keller Williams does a Red Day. They call the city because they want to come down. Sometimes we don't always have things to do. We'll be able to facilitate them through the committee, but ultimately the plan is to have it fully maintained, properly preserve it. It was already designated as a historic landmark by the city because of its history. But the future, and I've sat in on the committees, they're beyond energetic to get started. And I believe there was some bribes to get this moving along by Pat Mays, so I won't go into detail there. But I think that, like you said, it's the right thing to do. But it is a great opportunity for volunteer organizations, and I think, much like John Ehall did, I think you'll see other ones to do it. But yes, Public Works has to take a role.
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate. Certainly, this is one of those places that is kind of it's maybe not exactly a destination place for school kids, but at the same time, it is a destination place for school kids, to learn a little bit about the history of their city that they are in and so forth. And, certainly having a well-maintained place and a kind of a story to tell, I think is an important thing. So, again, I'll echo the comments of others, and, this is a good thing that the city has taken on. So I appreciate all the efforts.
Very good. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to read the resolution.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Hamilton Township trustees related to the ownership of the Hill Wagner Cemetery.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Resolution 67 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
So on April 23rd, City Council authorized the execution of a letter of intent with Verizon Wireless to extend their easement, their lease agreement at the White Pillars Tower on Oakland Road for a period of 40 years. If you recall briefly, what we discussed in April, the technology of the technology of cell towers has changed, and companies like Verizon are evaluating what the future is and letting go leases on some macro towers, and then tightening up on other ones, 3G and 5G and someday 10G and onward and upwards. They see a day where macro towers, which are the large independent towers, and those that are on water towers, to someday go away. But they've also identified some that they want to hold on to. So our lease agreement that actually originally started in 2001 with Cincinnati Bell before they got bought out by Verizon is already there. It's an existing, there's an existing structure up there. There's a building, there's wires, there's obviously the antenna. So they reached out to the city by stating this is a tower that they would like to identify for a long term, 40-year lease, where our current lease will be replaced, our current lease agreement is really the reason why this is such a smart deal, I think, on the city's behalf, because we're currently in a extension period. So currently at about $1,800 a month, the city, that's good revenue to the city. And if we held on to it for 40 years at the current rate, we'd far exceed $260,000. So why don't we just hang on to it? We'll meet that number. Well, we're also in a position that within 30 days, they could simply say we're done and we're out the $260,000 they're offering the city. There's no change in the tower. There's no change in the structure. There's no change in the fencing. There's no change in anything. There may never, and there likely will never be a change. They may simply exercise their option that they don't need it. They may walk away, and if they do that for 5 years, it just goes null and void. And of course, we maintain the $260,000. The easement, in the most simplest term, is broken amongst three types of easement. There's the 5-foot and a 12-foot utility easement. Those are what goes to the building, and then what goes to the tower. There's there's the equipment easement, which is the structure, and then of course the water tower easement, which is separate. The reason why this document is a little complicated is because water towers by themselves can't be treated as real estate. So when you read through this litany of paperwork, but why does it say exclusive? What's exclusive is their building. While the city has the rights at any point in time to add T-Mobile or AT&T at any point in time, we do not have the right, nor should we, to say, hey, we got a building there, you want to jump on top of it. That's not our building. It has nothing to do with the water functions. It was owned, operated, installed by Verizon. So when you read exclusive and you say, why does it say exclusive when we reserve the right to still add anyone we want? The exclusive is the mechanic building, and that obviously makes sense. So if somebody else comes in, they need to be free and clear of that particular easement. So with that, the city would then take a $260,000 one-time payment. There's a small escrow fee that we split with them. All the recording fees is done by them. So that aspect of it is actually, we would potentially even close this week, likely early next week. And then the city will be wired that funding. If you recall what happened at that same meeting on April 23rd, City Council set up a PFAS fund. It's actually fund number 67. It's actually titled PFAS Remediation Fund. And we set that fund as a landing zone for this funds, but we also set that as a landing zone for a grant Chris was able to get us. And of course, it's very common knowledge the city, like many communities, is actively involved in the lawsuits against the makers of the product, and that would be a landing zone for this. So with this, what I'm asking for council tonight is sort of a two-step thing. One is to the emergency, because I'm running out of time on the LOI and I need to get this executed. But also we thought that this might be a good time for the city, based upon where, thanks to Chris's efforts, where we're at, to make the PFAS remediation a regular thing on our councilmanic worksheet, and for maybe every other month updates, and have Chris make an update every other month. And with that, I got to say, when I had to fill the position for assistant city manager, I think it's pretty known that I'm an extremely impatient person, and I wanted it filled immediately. And Chris came about the process late in the game, and I just want to say that we are extremely fortunate. I got to see it Sunday. I got to see it today in the meeting. I got to see how he interacts with our public works crews, which is crucial. But also, can you imagine taking on a task the size of PFAS remediation? Something that is going to be done by 29, and it is the biggest ball of twine you've ever seen, while constantly keeping up with the lawsuits and what needs to be submitted. This needs to be submitted with this, and so on and so forth. So I think these will be very valuable updates by Chris to explain to everyone, not just the council. I think it's extremely important, and council realizes it, that the public gets to see it. So rather than to go into much detail on what Chris has done now, I think that because it's not on the council meeting, I would like for him to just to update council on something that him and Lisa, she's our utility billing clerk, is just completed, and just touch on that allow him to sort of touch on that.
Yeah. So this kind of dovetails into the communication thing about, with the main breaks and whatnot. So we identified that, our communication can improve, just like you talked about it, Mr. Hart. There's several, you got to identify things that you can improve on. One of the things that was brought up is, we need to hit all of our customers somehow, some way. And what we haven't done yet, and what you will see on your upcoming bills, is we got limited space, but we do have space on there that we can identify where to go on our city website to get all the information that the city currently has that we know about regarding PFAS. So that will be on your bill. It'll identify. Please visit this link, which will take you to all the information that we have at our disposal at this point. So that's the next step we're taking. I know, Dave, you talked about, we're going to talk about this every other month, but one of the other exciting things I think is, we did close our RFQ period on, I think it was last Friday. So our request for qualifications for design firms for the design of PFAS remediation, those are now in our hands. They're being reviewed internally by staff, and we will be bringing a recommendation for a design firm to move forward with design within hopefully by the next council meeting. And then obviously, as this comes up on Councilmanic, I'll continue to bring updates, and as little or as small as the updates may be as we move through the design process, we will certainly bring everything we've done in those past 2 weeks or those past 2 months. We'll bring to council and the public's attention about where we're going. I will say one thing, and I said this previously, and I'm going to continue to say it. We continue to need help from our legislation, from our legislators at the state and the federal level for funding. We're not the only ones with this problem, but there will be a time where it will be a funding issue. So we're continuing to push on them. Mr. Kennedy and myself have made a lot of contacts and a lot of inroads with a lot of different people in the last several months. We're going to continue to push that envelope. But that will be the critical stage, is we will get through design and we will have a good, solid design for remediation. We need to come up with a solution to the funding problem. So that'll continue to be my speech. So, yep.
I just want to add that I don't think sometimes you appreciate the amount of expertise that the city has amongst our staff members. You saw it with Ann tonight. Obviously, we consider Joe a big part of our team. I got asked to go to lunch with the city manager of Indian Hill, and she asked me to bring Chris along. I thought, well, this was really nice. I quickly realized in lunch why she wanted Chris to come along. She wanted to pick his brain, because there's not a lot of people out there that have already gone this far with what he did in Warren County. So I quickly realized that I didn't have much to say at lunch, and so because she really wanted a chance to talk back and forth and pick on his ear of somebody who's already gone down this road. So I think that spoke volumes to that. So we'll get that on Councilmanic. Misty will add that to the list. And I wanted to add one thing that Brian, Councilmember Goodyear mentioned. You'll see in there, there's a comment in there about if the city has a new tower, it can't interfere or cause any kind of issues with the existing Verizon. We did a little digging that that's actually covered through co-location requirements. So they can't simply say, oh, you added AT&T. We think it's impacting our tower, so make it go away. Between Joe, and the attorney for Verizon, we clarified that doesn't happen. There's FCC laws that dictate interference and claims of interference. So I just wanted that because Mr. Goodyear asked me to look into it, and I just wanted to get back to you on that.
All right. Any comment or questions? Mr. Ping.
I just wanted to thank staff for adding this to the agenda because I think it's important. In part, just because the multiple avenues of communication. Not everybody goes to the website, and everybody reads email. Not everybody does this or that or the other, and so this is just one more place to get that information. The other thing too is I think that it's appreciated that you guys have a lot on your plate. You got a lot going on, and getting together something to present to council is going to be another thing to have to do. But hopefully, it's not too burdensome, and I think it's very important. And so, getting that information to us is important. It's also more important that it gets out to the community so that everyone knows what's going on with this. The other thing too is, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but 5 years seems like a really long time until you consider that we have a major construction project to do and commissioning of all the connection points and all that stuff. And so getting design started right away and getting into construction right away is going to be important. I guess the only other thing, just as a comment, that if during the process of what you are doing there comes anything that perhaps we could share with council or the community regarding the legislative aspect, sample letters that we could provide or something like that to help so that our citizens could write their representatives and senators and say, hey, we need a lot of help. The numbers we're looking at on this are so large that we definitely want to see some grant money coming our way to make this happen. So anyway, just a few comments, but like I say, I appreciate what you guys are doing and in regard to keeping us informed.
Mr. Ping, I think that's a great idea, and I think I think we'll draft up a sample letter for anyone in the community that wants to get behind the efforts of the city of Loveland. I think that's a great idea.
Mr. Goodyear?
Well, I would echo a lot of what Mr. Ping just said, but I do think also that even though I know, Mr. White, you mentioned, putting this on the council mag doing every other month, it's not necessarily there's going to be a dramatic update every 2 months. However, I also think it's very important that the public gets to hear on a regular basis what the city's doing and what our approach is and how we're dealing with a problem that a lot of people are concerned about. And I think that, I hear it from neighbors, I hear it from other people in the community. There's a lot of concern about making sure that we deal with this. I applaud staff for the fact that I think we are well ahead of a lot of other communities in what we're doing. I think we've been very proactive about it. I think things like, it's kind of interesting how something like this water tower easement for Verizon can help us start to work on PFAS. But, that's a proactive way that the city has gone about trying to earmark some funding to start the process of working on this. And it's a smart, proactive way. And as Mr. Kennedy said, I think there's no question that from a financial standpoint, it's the right thing to do because while, as Dave said, over the life of the contract with Verizon, we might make more money potentially. Verizon can just cancel this agreement at any time and then we'd be out. So taking this lump sum at this point, I think is smart. And then it can also help us start on PFAS. But, mentioning the funding, you're talking about, there's an iceberg out there that's just waiting for us. $17 million that somehow we have to pay to remediate this. And it's something, by the way, that the city did nothing to cause. This is not anything that any of us did, but we're stuck dealing with this problem, and it's a massive financial problem. And so hopefully there'll be a realization or recognizing by the legislature that, communities like Loveland can be expected to fund all this when, frankly, we didn't do this. But I do appreciate the fact that the staff has been so proactive, and I am very concerned about the financial aspect of this. So I appreciate the fact that we're going to be able to tell the public on a regular basis what's going on. And I also think it's very smart. I know I think it's happened within the last couple months, but the notion of putting this on water bill so people have as much as we can do to get access to people, information to people about this, I think is best. So I just appreciate it all, and I do think this is a very important thing to do.
Anyone else? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I'm clear. 100% of the easement was, yes, is the one in the PFAS, correct?
Yes. You 260,000. The city has a very small escrow split. Outside of that, all of it will be deposited in the Fund 67.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the ordinance.
Let's see. Ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute a purchase and sale agreement of new easement and lease agreement with AIO Operating LLC for the Oakland Road Water Tower and declaring an emergency.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Ordinance 68 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
All right, and then I believe we need a motion to place the PFAS remediation on the councilmanic worksheet with updates every 2 months beginning at the September 10th meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey? Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So tonight, following the public hearing, I have legislation in front of council regarding the transfer of 507 Love of Madeira Road to the CIC. I think we've talked about this. The agreement's fairly standard. We are made it very clear, and we'll obviously make it very clear to the CIC that we would prefer this done as a lease. When you look at that property, and I don't have really, but you can see it there's a small portion of the property has a little bit of a tail like a comet over here of the 1.6. There's just a little bit of that section we're going to carve away. It improves our access back to the Chestnut property. It's irrelevant to the end user and really is irrelevant, but it helps round that corner a little bit. So the way that agreement is worded is that CIC is full authority to negotiate a lease. The lease agreement does not need to come back to city council. If for some reason, unbeknownst to the city council, to the CIC, that it ends up that they determine that a sale is the best offer, that does have to come back to city council for approval. But barring that, there's no further action by city council. That's what your CIC is for. We've obviously basic arrangements. Chris and I already working with the insurance company. What do we need? So on and so forth. A grant application was submitted today for the demolition. We're hopeful, but that's by no means a guarantee with that. But again, we don't do a lot of things by emergency, but we do have had an end user identified for this property back since March. That end user is... we need to get moving. The CIC needs to get moving on this. We're working with a financial advisor a little bit to help bring in to work with the CIC a little bit in terms of what we're talking about. What are the comps? What were the lease payments? All that, and so on and so forth. With that, obviously, I'm also presenting this as an emergency tonight. But if you look at this property, it's really unique when the city gets involved with this, because you're talking about bringing jobs to the city. You're talking about bringing income tax to the city. You're talking about lease revenue to the city. But I can't imagine a better example, a way for the city to display what can happen on Love of Madeira Road as part of their revitalization efforts. This can stand as a pretty shining example of what can be done in terms of private investment. We're excited about the end user, excited about the CIC getting a chance to work with them and meet with them and go through the negotiation process. This ordinance then will get that process moving.
All right. Any comment or question? Mr. Medler, we lost our vice mayor. There he is. Yes, Mr. Hart.
So we're on a time limit now. The meeting will end in 10 minutes.
Sounds good.
Stress, got pressure on stuff. Mr. Kennedy, the lease payments, if it were to end up that the end user is under a lease, the payments of that lease would be directed to the CIC or to the city?
Well, we were planning on the revenue coming back to the city. That was per the agreement. Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Bateman?
Just along those lines, similar to what Mr. Blair mentioned in the public hearing, I think it's important that as we utilize the CIC in this method for exactly its intended purpose, but I think let's not sort of lose sight of and you mentioned this, Mr. Kennedy, that for them to work with the end user and all of that, but just to give that sort of entity, the revenue that it needs, and a system to where we can really start to empower them, even if it's just an administrative type of fee, as a means of helping to facilitate, but somehow to provide them an avenue to make more fantastic programs like the Heights Rehabilitation Program, an ongoing reality, or Mr. Blair mentioned tree removal. I mean, that's a great idea. Stuff like that an empowered and funded CIC will be able to take on those mini grant projects that I think will continue to strengthen our community. So again, just wanted to harp on that point, but looking forward to this certainly transformative process as we start to move all of our development eyes towards the Loveland Madeira corridor finally. So it's exciting days ahead.
Any further comment, Mr. Goodyear?
I just actually had a question, and this may be obvious, but I got a little confused with your answer, Mr. Kennedy. So as I understand it, absent action of council, the funds come to the city, not to the CIC, correct?
The city has an ordinance that was passed back in I want to say I was here, so I think it was in 2016. The city had actually this was a part of the bowling alley property, if I recall. The city has an ordinance that states all revenue from the sale or lease of a piece of property, all funds advanced to or received by the Loveland CIC from the purchase, lease, or other use of property transferred to it by the city shall be remitted back to the city upon receipt, specifically delineated otherwise by city council. When the city sold the property up in the Loveland Heights, which was the Highland properties, the transfer specifically stated that all revenue shall remain with the CIC. That seeded the Heights Grant Program. That was those funds, and there's still funds in there. I think what Mr. Blair said is a good point. The powers of the CIC, while they have been extremely beneficial to the city, we're certainly not using them to their fullest. But I will tell you that the biggest example of what the CIC can do for the city, in my personal opinion, just because while I was here, was because they're not required to do public bidding. That is the best example of what the CIC is able to do, is what you saw at the White Pillars Homestead. So the city council would have been required to simply take the highest bid. That's the way it is. We advertise, we have to take public bids, we have to sell that property. That wasn't the best thing for that homestead. That homestead needed someone who was not going to simply buy it, fix it, do the minimum, potentially sell it and flip it. So per the CIC, the city took a lower amount of money to get Neil and his wife to move into that building. And because of that, I've been up there. It has been meticulously restored. The city countered that by making it a historic structure, which meant the city could still have control. So if somebody tried to do something, even paint it a different color. So that is a really good example of what White Pillars, what the CIC can do, but they can do so much more. So,
any further comment, question? I agree with what Mr. Blair said. And I think we're looking for opportunities to fund the CIC. And I think the concern is we've got a lot of projects coming up that need to be funded. That maybe we didn't get all the funding we were hoping for in this year's capital budget. We've got the whole Loveland Madeira corridor that's not going to be totally funded. I think the concern is before we start not giving away money, but diverting money. I don't want to be borrowing money that we otherwise would have. If we have a source of it, I think we need to be a little conservative until we see where we are. And still does mean later we can't find an opportunity, might even be this property, to say, all right, we're in good shape. Let's now start taking those lease payments and giving them to CIC every year. So we'll continue to look for opportunities to do that. I'm just not sure at this time this is the property to do it. Go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance transferring real property on Loveland Madeira Road located in the city of Loveland, County, Ohio, to the Community Improvement Corporation of Loveland and declaring an emergency.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Goodyear,
Yes.
Mr. Hard,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Ordinance 69 is adopted by a vote of
Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Before you have a memorandum which accompanies an ordinance which, if adopted by City Council, will authorize a change to the schedule of municipal positions. It was not my intent, in case this is actually a record, this is actually going to also repeal Ordinance 65, which Council just passed earlier this evening. And I'll explain why. So earlier this year, after more than 20 years of service, the City of Loveland, we lost our systems manager, Tina Kearns, which everyone is aware of. Over the years, her position evolved from a support position, operations position, and ultimately landed with a lot of HR function and also a lot of technology, IT-related functions. In addition to that, the position had a supervisory role for one full-time and one part-time position. So with any change, we decided to take the opportunity to explore and with that, to evaluate the delegated duties of the remaining team members that we had. So I sat down with staff, both sworn staff and civilian staff, and obviously it takes some time after when you have a vacancy to really realize what exactly what the person was doing. We had a job description, but we didn't, we couldn't capture everything. So that caused the delay. I wasn't able to get this before council in order to kind of put this all together with the previous resolution. So that's why we're here today asking first reading to go ahead and repeal something that you just passed. So the attached legislation, what we would propose to do after we went through, we reviewed the current job description. We realized there's definitely a sufficient work to replace the full-time position, but there were several modifications recommended by my staff in the job description. So the attached legislation would propose eliminating the systems manager position and its corresponding job description, and instead propose creating the new position of support services assistant. And those changes to the schedule of municipal positions are in Exhibit A. So we currently have an operations assistant who functions as the assistant to the assistant chief and who handles all the operations of the police department. So the operations we define, that's our patrol, our criminal investigations, our K-9 unit, bike patrol. It's the officers that are out in the street. So we have an assistant, operations assistant, whose main function is to provide support for our operations staff. What we do with the proposed title, support services assistant, is essentially create a very close job description, but instead of supporting operations, it's to support all of our support staff. Our support staff, this position would support myself, the chief's position, our property room, our records, and our mayor's court. And in addition to that, they would be assigned many administrative duties that support all of the staff members, such as payroll and scheduling. In addition to that, as you know, in small cities, nobody does any one job. So we all would be, this position would also take a very strong role in providing customer service responsibilities to the public as they come in and interact with the police department. By changing or shifting some of the job responsibilities that we went through, and also the supervisory role could be removed with the new position. With the new addition of the HR director position, many of the functions that Tina was doing are actually better suited to be in an HR director's hands. We have an IT vendor who is very capable in Velicor. We can take a lot of the IT responsibilities that the position had and let our IT vendor work with them. And we also did meet with the vendor and go over a lot of these job responsibilities as well. So what these changes would ultimately do is it would make this position consistent with the other civilian positions that we have. As I said, the operations position in function and also pay, because we would make a change in the pay scale from a 7, and this would be classified as a pay range of 3. So overall, we feel the efficiency of the team would be increased. It's going to balance our assigned tasks more evenly amongst personnel, and actually takes several tasks that we were doing and places it into the hands of city staff or vendors who are better suited to perform them. The proposed job description for the staff services assistant is also attached in Exhibit Exhibit B for you. And as I said, the fiscal impact, there is a positive fiscal impact to the city by changing it from a pay range 7 to a pay range 3. We would realize a reduction in personnel cost. So ultimately, next week after second reading, we'll be asking you to be recommending that City Council pursue option 3, which would be electing to approve the requested legislation as presented, which would allow us to move forward with filling the vacant position. And again, it would improve our team efficiency, and also have a positive impact on our personnel costs. If anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? All right, we'll go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance establishing the compensation and classification for the position of support services assistant, removing the position of system manager, and repealing ordinance 2024-65.
All right, as far as city council reports, Labor Day, which is next Monday, September 2nd, city offices will be closed. Does anybody else have anything to report? All right, I do believe our city solicitor has requested a executive session. I believe Mr. Bateman has a motion to make.
I'll move that we go into executive session to conference with counsel related to pending litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps? Mr.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Bateman? Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.